Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Wednesday's Wellness webinar with Strove. I am Adrian Penzorn and I am your host today. Here to chat through a nutrition topic that we're kicking off April with. You'll know that April is all about nutrition. We've got a meal logging challenge going on at the moment. We're trying to optimize nutrition, improve how we feel and how we operate and how we perform on a day-to-day basis. And today's webinar falls in line with that. I'm going to chat you through some smart strategies that are going to help optimize your nutrition on a day-to-day basis to help your energy levels and help your performance. And that performance might be just how you feel, might be how you're able to put out a little bit more work, how you feel, how you recover from day to day, and if you have some sort of additional training or exercise that's part of your daily and weekly routine, maybe these tips and tricks will all come in handy for what is often a very busy time. As we go, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat. Make sure if we can make this as engaging as possible, and you can take out from today's session a couple things, and I'll swing around to all the questions towards the end, and hopefully leave you with at least one or two things that you can put into practice this week and see if you do feel any better, if you're able to optimize your energy levels and how you go. All right, so let's jump into it straight away. And what we're looking at today is performance, right? And performance in the way that we work and the way that we operate on a day-to-day level often comes down to how we fuel. Now, nutrition is not the only reason that we might feel better or we might struggle a little bit. There are different reasons that can impact sort of your quality of day to day. It might be exercise related, it could be stress, it could be illness, but nutrition is often the one sort of most overlooked aspect, and quite often the easiest to change. With one or two small things, we do feel a fairly big input from that. Right, and there are a couple common reasons, that nutrition might have a role to play, and one of them is just our normal workday pattern. We get quite busy, and because of that, our food often falls by the wayside. Our choices become a little bit more difficult. We don't always, plan or prep in quite the right way. And what a typical pattern might look like that contributes to us feeling lethargic or not being able to optimize the way that we operate every day are things like skipping breakfast, having long gaps in between meals. When your body really wants a nice full energy tank, it wants to be able to fuel consistently, and we end up relying on quick hits of energy or caffeine to get over something. And all of these start to become a daily pattern that compound on a day-to-day basis. And all that means is that our kind of energy distribution is impacted because of these chronic decisions that we're making. What we often feel because of this, and most probably I'm going to ask you for some feedback in a minute on what you feel might be your sort of typical risk point in the day, but it might be that mid-morning dip, 10, 11 o'clock, and we feel like we need a little pick-me-up. Perhaps it's the post-lunch fog, we're feeling a little lethargic, maybe we can't quite concentrate, we get a little bit irritable, or maybe we've got low resilience to anxiety, to illness even, or to certain stresses that come about on a day-to-day basis that could manifest as something like cravings, which we all feel at some point. And these kinds of things that are food related often get in the way of our productivity and how well we can operate. We start to think a little bit more about food, or we start to feel these symptoms, which then mean we can't prioritize and focus on the key aspects of a day. Now, good nutrition can support this because it gives us more stable energy throughout the day. And that's the number one driver of the way we feel is how our body's energy levels are reacting to the environment that we're in and to our blood glucose levels or different metabolic functions. All of these, the first and most apparent way that we feel a change to it is our energy. That's when we know that, right, we're doing something well, or we're under a little bit of strain, or I'm a little bit off here. Before anything else manifests, is that energy level that's going to tell us that. We're also able to get better appetite control by focusing on our nutrition, see the day through, make sure those gaps between meals aren't too big. We don't go into one meal overly hungry and perhaps eating too much and paying for that a little later in the day. And as we go through today's session, I'm going to talk about the better choices we can make, how we can plan and prepare for that, and how our routine is going to support that. We'll also look at things like hydration and caffeine. And hopefully by the end of this session, you can put one thing into place that is going to overcome that workday pattern issue that you might have, that you're going to be able to reassess your own daily performance and how you feel after making the changes, and then see if you need to adapt that. Perhaps it's working, perhaps it's not. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of nutrition because we all are a little bit different. So we need to figure out what our key kind of drivers are, what our hurdles are, and find the solutions that are going to improve along the way. And that's what today's session is about. It's not about finding a perfect solution. There's no such thing. It's just about being a little bit better, making some progress towards whatever that outcome is you're looking to do, and making this as simple and easy as possible, because the number one hurdle in the way for nutrition is really the friction we put in the way, either through the environment we create, or the stresses that we feel, or just the goals and difficulty that we put in place trying to achieve what we want to. Right. So to kick it off, I'm going to pop a poll up in the chat. And what I'd like to do is for you to tell me where, let's launch this one, where you lose the most momentum in a day. Right, one of 5 options. Where are you most likely to struggle? What brought you to today's session? Perhaps one of these kind of stand out as the most impactful for you. Is it that mid-morning energy crash that I said? You get to 10, 11 o'clock, you need to grab a coffee, you need to have something to eat, you can't get through to lunch, your mind's not able to focus, or perhaps it's after lunch, that afternoon brain fog. Are you just too busy to eat well? Is that your main struggle? Do you think you can't put in place consistency because just how busy you are? Are you relying on caffeine to get through the day? Or do you have the right intentions and you just struggle with consistency? Which is the most difficult, do you think? And we're going to pick up some trends and we're going to talk about these as we kind of go through and think about the most applicable tools that might meet you where you're at. All right, at the moment, we're seeing that afternoon brain fog, about 40% of you here. That's the common momentum breaker, as well as just having the healthy intentions, but not being able to keep consistent. And for the most part, eating well and nutrition isn't so much about knowing what to do. You know, for most of us, sure, there's some nuance in this, but we know what good foods are. We know how we could eat a little bit better. We all know maybe 1 or 2 places that we could change, but making the change and keeping going with that becomes quite difficult. It's interesting to see that the mid-morning, the busyness, caffeine being the least frequent response here, aren't getting as much as those two. So the afternoon brain fog, which speaks to a couple things to me. We'll talk a little bit about timing of nutrition and when and how we're eating, and then perhaps looking at how we can be as consistent with this so that we're able to achieve the sort of longer term goals that we want to in order to get there. If we can't keep consistent, we'll never see it. All right. We've got a good few responses. I'll give a few more minutes. You can keep that going as you like. Let's move on to the next thing and get started with why this is all actually important. And we're going to look at the energy fundamentals that support this. The afternoon brain fog falls very much in line with this. And there are a few things here that perhaps you can take away and think, well, maybe that applies to me. And let me try and practice that so that I can do this as often as possible. So what drives crashes at work, and what drives particularly this afternoon struggle that we often experience? And it can often be a combination of things, and the 4 most common here. The first is underfueling. And we see it time and time again with, you know, our own clients that we have on our various coaching programs and practice, having seen and worked with people who are often very busy. Underfueling and getting the distribution of calories, of energy that you're getting from your food wrong is the number one thing that contributes to building up and making us feel a little bit poorly in the afternoon. Maybe that sort of after lunch, feel like I need to go lie down for a little bit, that brain fog that we've spoken about. And where the most at-risk time for this is too little food early in the day. We try and get through breakfast with the smallest, quickest thing we can. Maybe we're just relying on coffee to get through, to lunch, and I'll get something there because my day isn't planned and prepped well enough. And it's most probably, the busy time. We've got to get kids to school. I've got to get to work. I've got to get online. And it means we're not prioritizing the first part of the day. You end up playing catch up for the rest of the day in order to give your body the nutrients that it needs, to give it a little bit of good nutrition, a bit of energy, to give it even some proper hydration. And we end up paying for that later in the day. It might be a fairly simple fix for those of you that did say that afternoon brain fog was an issue. Have a look at your day. Are you relying on lunch for quite a large amount of energy to come from your meals? Do you actually have a good breakfast? And if not, maybe that's the simplest thing that you can focus on. Can I look at fueling a little bit better, front loading my day with a little bit more so that I can get better distribution? My body's going to metabolize it better. It's going to feel better for it. I'm going to have much more stable blood glucose levels. And by the time I get to the afternoon, I'll feel a little bit better. There's a knock-on impact there where it might also help in terms of whatever is happening at dinner. Quite often that then becomes the meal that we rely on the most. We overeat. It might then impact our sleep. Maybe we just end up eating a little bit too much because of it. And it's this little knock-on effect from getting one thing wrong and playing catch-up throughout the day. We also see that with exercise. If we're underfueling, still trying to get a session in at some point, but my energy is flat in the afternoon. If you didn't get your morning workout in, the chances of actually doing something later in the day are a little bit lower. So fueling properly, spreading out your meals instead of relying perhaps on just one or two key meals in the day might help that afternoon productivity, reduce the brain fog, and help you get in a little bit more with your day, better energy throughout it. Right. So one of the primary crash drivers is underfueling and splitting out how and when we're eating. The second then is relying on fast energy. Right? And some of that is because of underfueling earlier, but fast energy becomes our pick-me-up. And you get caught in the cycle of, it might be the mid-morning that you're feeling a little bit flat, or the afternoon, and you get to lunchtime, whatever the sort of key period for you is, and then you need something that's going to give you a quick pick-me-up, a quick burst of energy, something that's typically then going to be fairly high in sugars. It might have other stimulants to make you feel better. It'll be quite refined. I can eat this quickly. I can eat it on the go because I need to feel better now before the next meeting, or whatever the case is. So we get stuck in this cycle of fast energy, trying to think about something that'll quickly solve my problem. And that comes with low nutrient density foods, things that aren't really supporting you very well. When that builds up, it means our intake of good things, of our good nutrients, our B vitamins that are going to help with our energy metabolism, a bit of protein and healthy fats, these things go out the window because our quick solutions that are just there as a pick-me-up don't contain any of those other good things. And as that cycle continues, we feel like we need them more and more. Right, a little bit of planning can help there, and we'll swing back around in a couple of minutes to look at some strategies on that specifically. The third key point is low hydration, not focusing enough on water intake. We might rely on something else that's fast energy to pick me up, and it comes in a fluid form that doesn't necessarily help our hydration as much. We need to be focusing on getting sufficient water in because our brain needs a lot of it throughout the day. If you, again, going back to our afternoon brain fog, if you are feeling that, are you perhaps someone that's just not drinking enough water? Is that a simple enough solution? Have a look back on your days when you're really feeling a little bit flat in the afternoon and think, can I get by here with just improving my hydration, taking in a little bit more fluid, and do I feel any better for it? So many bodily processes rely on it. And when it's a little bit hot, we might need a little bit more. As we move into the winter in the southern hemisphere here, it also drops off the radar a little bit. It gets a little bit cooler. We don't think that we're thirsty. We're relying a little bit too much on our thirst to drive our fluid intake, and we end up being dehydrated. Right, so possibly one of the simplest solutions you could walk away with today is just saying, well, let me put that bottle of water on my desk. When it's low, I'm going to top it up. It's in front of me. It's in my mind because I can see it, and it's going to drive a good hydration habit because of that. And the fourth most common reason we see crashes at work is because of what I call a caffeine drift. So it's either too much caffeine or poor timing of it. And what this does is mask fatigue. So it might mean, well, I'm under fueling, or I'm actually dehydrated, but this caffeine plaster that I've stuck over it makes me feel a little bit better, and I can get through the next hour and a half where I haven't actually solved the issue at hand, but I'm just feeling a little bit better. It's transient, it's going to pass, but it means I'm back to square one in a little bit. I'll focus on caffeine in a little bit more, but it's not to say that it's a poor option, that we need to cut it out. We'll just cover perhaps when and how we want to take it in, and how it might affect us, and what we should consider later in the day in terms of the compounding impact that that might have. Right, so one of those four areas might stand out to you if you are someone who's struggling with that afternoon brain fog, like a large proportion were. This might be a key, simple solution to look at. Right. Now, when we're looking at the strategies to improve this, I'm going to leave you with 4 or 5 things. Maybe one of them is going to be the main standout for you. Don't try and focus on too much. One of the biggest mistakes we often make with nutrition is trying to change too much at once, putting too much on our plate, so to speak. And for those who struggle with consistency, who have those healthy intentions but just can't keep it going over and over again, think about whether you're just trying to do it a little bit too much. Let's peel it back and think about 1 or 2 things, and maybe one of these smart strategies are going to work for you. And the first is building meals for steady energy. And I like this concept of a performance plate, which I'll give you a little bit more detail on the next slide. But it's a nice visual way to think about, is my meal balanced? And if any one of these are out of proportion relative to what I need, or what my daily energy requirements are, perhaps how much I'm exercising, it's a driver of how it might impact your energy levels. And if we get our plate balance wrong, that might mean it becomes a little bit more difficult to get through the 3 hours before the next one. We shouldn't really need to be eating more often than every 3 to 4 hours. If we struggle to get 90 minutes past the meal, and all of a sudden we need a snack, we need another meal, and we want to look back and say, well, is my plate balanced enough? Does it look like this? And if not, where can I make a bit of a change? A quick checklist for this, and the first place we want to start with a good balanced plate is that there's a protein anchor on it. It doesn't mean it's high protein, it just means there's a good source of it. It's about 25% of your plate, a quarter of it is a good source of protein. Where we want to fill up and get the bulk of our meal, the half of a plate should come from our plants, which are vegetables or fruit and beans, and something that's going to give a lot of color and going to give us a lot of fiber. That fiber means the energy that we get from our food is digested a little bit slower, and it's able to sustain us for much longer in between our meals. Then again, about a quarter of the plate is our energy contributing foods, where we get most of the energy from, which is some smart carbs and some healthy fats. And that's what we break down to produce energy. But we don't want it being the main thing of the plate, where we get a big dose of it, and that's all we're getting without getting any of the other good foods along with it. All right, and what that might look like, a little bit more like this: a good half a plate of all sorts of plants, lots of color that you can see there, which is great, about 50% of vegetables and fruit. And this is where we're going to get that fiber, we're going to get vitamins and minerals, we're going to get all the good things that contribute to feeling better, to energy balance, metabolism, long-term health, that a plate looks like. Right. Dinner is most probably quite easy for this. Lunch, we can be there or thereabouts. Maybe the portions will be a little bit smaller. For those of us struggling with midday to mid-afternoon, think about your lunch. Does it look something like this? And also think about your breakfast, which might be the most difficult to actually get into a proper, well-balanced performance plate, that we're getting some fruit and veg in and we're getting a good source of protein. Our carbs are normally quite easy. It's easy enough to get in, a cereal, a grain, a slice of high-fiber bread, something that gives us the carbohydrate and the starch, that 25%. But are we also getting the protein, and are we also getting the fruit and veg? Good sources of protein could be your fish, chicken, eggs, some dairy, are all great options, even beans and lentils and vegetable-based. Any of those are going to provide a good, valuable source of protein. And try and keep your high energy contributing foods, which will be particularly your carbs, to about a quarter of the plate. And making sure these are high fiber, so brown in color, or from a vegetable, like the picture's got some butternut or sweet potato there. Anything that's not just going to provide us that quick hit of energy. Right. That's what a performance plate looks like, and maybe a quick way to evaluate what your lunch looks like. If you're sitting down to have lunch now, maybe when you're dishing up for dinner this evening, can I eat the same foods that I normally do and just change my proportions on the plate to get me to where I want to go? Right. Sometimes a few small changes is enough without having to say, well, I'm going to cut out an entire food group. I can just change my proportions a little bit and get the goals that I'm looking for. All right, smart strategy number 2, we're going to look at the snacks and drinks. So if we can tick off some balanced meals, that's great. If breakfast also meets that, you're doing really, really well. And I can almost say you're going to be 80% of the way to having balanced energy. And you're going to feel a little bit better at lunch and in the afternoon. Dinner's going to become a little bit easier. You're not going to have a massive meal just to paper over all the gaps in the rest of the day. And you might feel a little bit more consistent from day to day. Snacks, while I said we don't really want to be relying on them, there's a time and place for them, and often we're going to need them. We aren't quite able to get through to lunch. Maybe the gap's a little bit longer than about that 3-hour period we spoke about. Maybe I am just truly hungry, and I need something. Having a good snack pattern can support what you're doing. It might mean you can also have a slightly smaller lunch or slightly smaller dinner, and that makes you feel a little bit better and feel a little bit lighter. Snacks, though, shouldn't typically be one thing on their own. Maybe that's the easiest rule just to stick to here, where we set a performance plate. It's got all the food groups. It looks great. When we're looking at a snack, we just want to combine 2 of those things. Right. If you have all 3 of them in a very small proportion, that's great. But try and veer away from a snack that only gives you one thing. So only a protein, for example. So just a cup of yogurt, or something that's just going to give you a little bit of carbohydrate. So just a slice of bread with something on it. We can be a little bit smarter with combining our snack pattern so that we get a little bit of protein with something else. Right, so it might be the yogurt with some berries. So we've also added the fruit in there. Maybe it's boiled egg and some fruit, or something quality on a whole grain cracker. We get a bit of cottage cheese and with some peanut butter, something that just combines things instead of eating a single food group on its own for your snack. Right, so if you are someone who relies on snacks, just think about some smart solutions to combine 2 food groups together in a small proportion that's going to get you through to the next meal. We do want to limit our choices around snacks. So with our main meals, I didn't focus too much on saying don't eat this, try and cut these things out. The place that we normally go wrong isn't so much with our meals, it's our in-betweeners. So if we're a little bit more aware of our snacks and we're focusing on a better snack pattern and actually saying, well, these are the foods I want to be eating, sometimes that's enough to take care of the things you want to limit. But I do want to mention things that the less we have of them, the better. And I'm sure we know what these are, but they're high energy dense foods. They're things that come with a large amount of sugar and fat normally together. Things like your pastries, baked goods, sweets and chocolates, the drinks that I mentioned where we said we want to focus on hydration, but it shouldn't come with calories as well. So avoiding sugar-sweetened beverages, things that are all going to give us that quick energy hit without any good nutrition. If you need to snack, base it on the fact that you truly are hungry. It's not a reason, snacking is not a reason to eat because you feel emotional, you feel stressed, you feel tired. Try and focus a little bit more on what your actual true hunger is telling you. And if you need the snack, limit some of those choices and make sure you've got a better snack pattern on hand. That might mean setting some practical office rules, which help. Your environment's going to determine how and when you eat and what's most accessible. So the easier you can make that, the better. Keep a couple shelf-stable options around. If you do have access to a fridge in your office space, have a snack on hand there that's going to be useful. Perhaps in your gym bag or in your cubby hole in the car, if you spend a lot of time traveling around, make sure you've got something that's a good option that combines a little bit of protein with something else that you can have when and if you need it. All right, create the environment and everything becomes a little bit easier. Now, the third smart strategy we're going to chat about is using timing to your advantage. A lot of our energy fluctuations throughout the day are based on when we're eating as much as what we're eating. Our gaps are also impacted by our day. And if we can be a little bit smarter with getting on top of our calendar and our meal timing, we can feel better for this. There's certain ways that your body wants to be exposed to things like food, calories, as well as sunlight and exercise. And we do all react a little bit differently, but being a little bit smarter with this can improve how your body operates and how you feel. Now, to start off with is we want to have a bit of a plan around this. When we're creating our daily calendar, our daily plan, we want to know when and what we're going to eat. Start by planning for your hardest part of the day, not the easiest. So if your hardest is the breakfast time, like I mentioned, because the day's a rush, just plan for that one. Make sure that you've got that one part of your day sorted. Because if that's taken care of, some of the other things become a lot easier. Don't make the biggest plan for when it's already going to be easy. You're not going to progress because of that. And you know that having the right environment just makes those choices easier anyway. So if you're going to put a little bit of effort into when and how you eat, plan for the hardest part of your day. Keep a couple backup breakfast or lunch items for intense meeting days. And when days do get a little bit busy, if you've got the right things around you, make sure that you can do that. So if you're looking at your day and that midday is the time that things get a little bit busier, try and protect your lunch. Focus on that. Maybe carve out a couple minutes where you're able to say, well, that lunch I'm going to have, I know I'm busy before and after, but it sets me up for being much more productive in the latter half of the day. Your mornings, make sure you're starting off with good nutrition. We've covered that a couple times, and hopefully that sits and resonates with a couple of you. The evenings, don't use dinner to compensate for having missed out on everything else. It should be a fairly light meal. It should be there to recover from the day and importantly set you up for tomorrow as well. If our dinner is too big and it impacts perhaps our sleep quality, we end up having it too late. We do find that we're waking up in the morning becomes a little bit more difficult. Our energy levels aren't as good. Our sleep isn't as ideal. And quite often we're actually not as hungry. Having a large late dinner might mean that breakfast is inhibited. We don't wake up feeling hungry. We don't want to eat anything. That means I'm getting to lunch again and needing a quick fix. And the cycle of this all becomes quite important. So use timing to your advantage to start your morning well. Make sure that you're prioritizing the midday and keeping the evening fairly simple and light as part of your end of the day recovery instead of your main food focus. Right. Smart strategy number 4 is making busy days easier, but not perfect. All right. So for those who are struggling with consistency, where we have these intentions of doing well, think about these as aspects that might be getting in the way. Are you striving to have a perfect day? Are you setting yourself up to say, well, this is the way I've got to eat, and if I'm not doing that, I'm not on track? That all or nothing approach is often, the key driver for this. So if we have a look at a couple strategies around a few sort of typical days, what of these stand out to you? And if they do, what can you put in place to do it? If you've got a meeting heavy day, make sure you're blocking out some time for your nutrition. Similarly, you might want to do it for exercise, put it in your diary, and have that session that you want to do as part of your daily routine. If you need to block out 20 minutes for breakfast, 20 minutes for lunch, make sure that you're doing that so that you can still get it in. Right. If you prioritize everything else, you might find that those things slip by. You get to 4 o'clock and realize I haven't eaten anything yet, but you didn't structure it into your day and you didn't plan for it. If you've got a commute heavy day, make sure you're packing some breakfast or snack instead of just leaving it to chance. I'm going to pick something up at the corner store, at the petrol station on the way past. Rather carry it with you. Keep it simple. Have a few of those little bankers that you know work as a snack or a breakfast that can go into your bag, that you can carry with you. It's going to save you time and it's going to save you money just by planning and preparing a little bit in advance. If you've got a longer format travel day, perhaps you're flying a lot. Again, this is an area where we end up falling off the wagon because we're stuck at an airport, we're eating airport food, perhaps relying on an aeroplane. You're in a different country, a different location, you don't know what's on the other side. Again, if you just plan around that to create a slightly better environment for yourself, things that are in the bag and things you can take with you is going to help. And importantly, keeping hydrated when we're traveling as well. We do note a sort of fair amount of dehydration caused by air travel, but the same when we're in the car all day or we're in public transport, we don't focus as much on keeping well hydrated and it starts to impact us. If it's a stressful week, just try and simplify everything. You don't have to nail that performance plate that's bright and colorful and looks great for every meal of the day, but try and find a simple version of it that's going to work when time's a little bit tough. If you do have something that you can prep multiple of, you can do make use of leftovers to cover the bases. Perhaps there's something you can stick in the freezer. Maybe it's the veg that you're struggling with, and can I just prep a little bit more of them and stick them on? Simplify things, repeat them if you need to. All of those are still good steps towards progressing. If you're working from home, try and create a kitchen cutoff. It's really easy to walk out your door and go and open the fridge. Plan your eating times. Instead of grazing throughout the day, keep your energy levels consistent by sticking to a routine, even when that food is really close to you. And if you're in the office, a little bit of setup where you're working from does go a long way. So if you've got the fridge that you can make use of, if you've got your desk around you, make sure you set up with having your water bottle visible, having somewhere that you're going to go and eat. Try not to eat at your desk. Take it away from you, find a moment and make sure that you're able to get through the day without shooting for perfection, but just making it a little bit easier by creating the environment. Right, I said we'd touch a little bit on caffeine and hydration. It wasn't a major risk for many of you who gave some feedback here, but I'm sure an interest for much of this. And for those who have the afternoon brain fog, quite often we end up relying on caffeine to get through that. And I think the takeaway here is going to be that caffeine's not the enemy. It's perfectly fine as part of a balanced diet. We can have it. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. The thing we need to be mindful of is the portion and the timing. Right. If it gets in the way of other hydration options, it's not going to be ideal. If you're relying only on coffee to give you your hydration for the day, you're going to fall short. We need to make sure that we're always going to be prioritizing water. as our main form and source of hydration. So when you wake up in the morning, first thing you do, make sure you rehydrating with some water before having the coffee, before having the tea, and have some good quality water. And don't wait until you feel thirsty. So tick your hydration box to make sure that you're optimized. And then we look at the caffeine strategy. If you are someone who's consuming caffeine, we can do this as part of, sort of a normal balanced approach, but set yourself some limits and evaluate how it impacts you. A high amount of caffeine, so typically anything that's maybe more than 3 or 4 cups a day, is going to be excessive. The amount of caffeine, we do all metabolize and tolerate different amounts of it, but for very few of us is it ever going to be advisable to consume too much or too late. And why too late is because it starts to impact our sleep and our recovery when towards the end of the day, the body wants to be winding down. It doesn't want to be stimulated. You might not feel like it impacts your sleep, but it will. And having that impact and the knock-on effect to your energy later in the day, just purely because you weren't able to sleep well enough, is a key driver. Set yourself a caffeine timing, a caffeine cutoff, really, and see how it impacts you, not just from your sleep that night, but how you feel waking up the next morning. Do it for a couple of days before you evaluate it totally. Say, I do feel better when my cutoff is 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock. All of us metabolize caffeine at a slightly different rate, and that's going to impact its actual impact on you. But the earlier, the better. Try not to have it on an empty stomach either. So in the morning or with lunch, make sure that it's after a meal. And try and prioritize the impact that it has on your sleep. Now, caffeine can be very useful in terms of our productivity when we're using it well. So caffeine works by making us feel a little bit more alert. It's not necessarily a stimulant in making us do more. It's purely how we perceive things. So we perceive our energy to be higher. We perceive the demand that something requires from us to be lower, even though it's actually not. That's why in one aspect it masks fatigue, but in the other we need to be mindful that it's just a perception that it's putting on us. So if we've got a key task, perhaps there's a meeting coming up, we can use caffeine wisely to improve our output, to get a little bit more work done, to be able to focus and do it wisely. Having it about 20 to 60 minutes before when you need that full effect is a good strategy to time it, but making sure in no way that is later towards the day and starts to impact your sleep, I think is a good approach to take. Angela, if you're drinking decaf, it's a good question. So decaf isn't zero caffeine, but it is very low and less likely to have an impact on your sleep levels, to have an impact on the stimulant effect that it has. So you can use that as I'm going to have a caffeine cutoff of 11 o'clock, for example, and then after that, I'm going to move over to decaf as a solution. See how you feel. If it feels good enough, that's great. If your sleep's good, your energy improves because of the change you've made, that's fantastic. If it doesn't, maybe try and go for a completely caffeine-free option, like a herbal tea or a rooibos or something, to see if that improves it even further. You might just need to base that on your own personal tolerance and metabolism of it. All right, so structure your caffeine intake. Just think about it. How much are you drinking and when is the last exposure to it? And see if playing around with that either improves that afternoon brain fog, your sleep at night, your daily energy levels, and how you're going. Right, those are my 5 sort of smart strategies, and I just wanted to wrap up by touching on some tools that you might be able to use to improve the effort these things take, and while not sort of focusing too much on them to add extra decision sort of fatigue to your day. Now, there are a couple of very useful ways that we can improve consistency, which was some of your issues, around using the things that are around us. And one of these, I think, is automating things that we decide all the time. Technology and AI and various things that are around us now can help in this aspect. And a few easy ones might be as simple as, creating a shopping list, creating a quick meal plan based on the foods that you have. All of these with a simple prompt can be good enough. Perhaps you've got a pantry full of a few foods and you want to find a way to use them and need some recipe ideas. These are the places that AI is starting to help us and can be very useful. If you have any specific dietary requirements, even things that might need medical or dietetic support, I wouldn't go that deep with a simple prompt in AI, but it's a simple task, finding something that's going to give you some inspiration and remove your own decision. Fantastic. A couple of other places technology can help, and apps and various things, is using online shopping lists, saving them, making sure you've got repeat orders, and every Monday these are the things I'm going to order because these are the meals I'm going to have. Maybe you've got a repeat number of meals that you have, and you can just stock your fridge and pantry accordingly. Using some AI for those meal ideas or for feedback. In our app, obviously, you get the meal logging, our meal logging feature to get some quick feedback on your meal balance. Not about calorie obsession, but for us to get a little bit of feedback on when and how we're eating, how this can be a little bit better, and use it for habit building can be very powerful. Less so when we're trying to get calorie numbers and grams of protein and everything right. It becomes quite a lot of burden to put on. We're just trying to make behavior and habit-based choices, get a little bit of feedback on when and how you're eating. If you're adjusting things, look at using wearables to get some context out of it. Maybe your sleep. If you are tracking your sleep, see how the changes and when and how you're eating and when you're using your caffeine, and whether that improves your sleep timings and your duration that you're getting sleep for, how you feel the next morning, even with a simple journaling routine. Any of those might help. You can use some wearables to keep that going and see if you adjust your routine, how it impacts anything that you might be monitoring, without becoming overly obsessed and fixated with those numbers. So use the tools that are around you, use a little bit of AI, use some of the systems, and see if something simple like having a saved grocery list, using your calendar to plan things a little bit better, using our meal logger for some feedback, and see how that improves. All right. So putting it into practice, perhaps a simple 7-day reset that you can try. Like I said, don't try to do everything at once, but pick something that you think is your low-hanging fruit that you think can realistically move the needle on your energy levels. Choose one breakfast that's going to get you closer towards that performance plate, that there's some plants in there, there's some protein and some quality grains. I think most of us have a real opportunity to improve our breakfasts. Then plan on 2 lunches. Don't try to get every lunch right throughout the week. If lunch is the time that you're really struggling with, what 2 lunches can you use that are going to match your performance plate? If hydration is the issue, set a daily water cue. So put it in your calendar, get a notification, put that bottle next to your desk, something that constantly reminds you of your water intake. If snacking is that issue, pick one better office snack, keep it stocked, keep it on your desk, keep it in your gym bag, make sure that it's around, and remember, it needs to be a combination of 2 food groups. If caffeine has been sort of an eye-opener to you, think about your portions. How much am I having? Is it more than 2 or 3 cups a day? And what is my cutoff time? Can I adjust that and be a little bit better? If you want to play around with some AI prompting for simple planning, try get a menu and see if it works for you. Maybe a shopping list just to get you started. Take away a little bit of decision fatigue and see if it improves how easy it is to build your consistency. And then review what works. Keep the things that change how you feel, change your energy. If the friction's increased because of it, find a better solution. Find something that's really as simple as possible to help you progress. And remember, you're not looking for perfection. You just want to be a little bit better. Right. So hopefully that's going to help you feel better, work better. And a few strategies that could work. Hopefully a few standouts to you that might be something that's applicable in one of our either 5 SMART strategies, or speak to improving of consistency or getting over that afternoon brain fog. If you have any questions, please pop them into the chat. We'll hang around for a few minutes and answer them. Jared's also just posted a feedback form. If you could take a minute or two, let us know how you found today's session. If there are any topics that you're quite interested in that you'd like one of these webinars to cover, you can also stick that on the form for us. We've got a mental health webinar coming up next month with PJ Clarkson, which I'm really looking forward to. And then if you've got any other options or suggestions, please feel free to share them. Otherwise, if there are no questions or chat, please do enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. It's been great sharing a few of those tips and tricks for you. Barbara, can we get some of the slides to print? I will pop the recording of this up into the app shortly. You can also, if you'd like, just send me an email, adrian@strove.ai, and I can share some of these with you. Jared did share another strategy here with energy slumps and post walk after lunch, which is really good. A little bit of light exercise after any meal does really improve your body's energy metabolism and blood glucose control. As simple as a 10 to 15 minute walk, you're going to feel amazingly better for it. So lunchtime is a good option for it. After dinner, if you do struggle a little bit with your sleep, and your dinner meal is your largest of the day, it's actually another good time to include it as well. So see if including some light exercise after any of your big meals in the day also improves your energy and sleep. Bridget says, intermittent fasting, is it just one of the latest fads, or does it work? It's been around for a long time, Bridget, so I wouldn't say latest fads. It does kind of come and go in and out of fashion. When you say, does it work, work for what, I might ask. So it can have an impact on a number of things. Some people use it for weight loss, and if that's sort of the goal of it, it can work. It's no better than any other diet. Why it works for weight loss is when it helps people eat less, it's going to be effective. And some people find that that eating window helps them to eat less, which can be useful. And if so, that's great. When we're here looking at energy and energy balance throughout the day, intermittent fasting in some instances can help, and in some instances can make it worse. So if intermittent fasting is giving us a very long window without food, particularly in our productive hours and around the morning and midday, that can be counter to good energy balance. So for people who really want to intermittent fast but find a way that it still fits their energy levels, quite often I'd say we'd rather do it so that our sort of consumption time, our eating window, is earlier in the day when we're productive, when we're exercising, when we're active, and we're rather extending the fasting time into the afternoon and evening when the body has less requirements for it. But I wouldn't say it's the only strategy. And if it is energy as your primary focus that you're looking to improve, it wouldn't be on my list of things to do. All right. I think that was all the questions that came in. Thanks for hanging around and sharing your Wednesday lunchtime with us. Look out for comms on our next webinar, which will be next month. And the recording of this will go up into the app a little later today. Have a fabulous Wednesday, everybody, and thanks for your time.